All right, here is one. I cannot believe this. I don't know who this question this is, but I just got quoted $2,000 for hired and non-owned auto coverage from my inspector. Does this sound right? Hell no. That's what I pay for the vehicle that I own. A couple $100 or less a year is all you should ever pay for hired and non-owned. So I'm going to just give you a 2-second story here. If you have inspectors and you have staff, either or, and they drive their own vehicle for work. So let's say Mary is your inside marketing rep and Mary's now gone for postage stamps or for a deposit at the bank. She's driving her vehicle on behalf of your company. So she has an at-fault accident. So she's hit somebody and has an at-fault accident. She gets insurance coverage from her personal auto policy. Okay. So if the plaintiff's lawyer says, wow, she doesn't have very high limits, or wow, she was on the job working for Malcolm when she came here and caused this auto accident. Now we're going to sue not only Mary, but we're going to sue the business. Okay. So when they sue the business, this is where you get your coverage: hired and non-owned auto liability. All right. If you're a one-man shop, you don't need this coverage. Okay. But the minute you have staff, and if they ever, even incidentally, drive their vehicle during the course of employment, you have this exposure. And if you don't buy this insurance coverage, you've got a big gap. Okay, so let's say this. Let's say Malcolm didn't have hired and non-auto coverage on his policy, on his business owner policy, or BOP, that he has for his business. He didn't add this endorsement or this add-on, if you will. Then what happens is Mary gets her coverage from a personal auto policy and Malcolm's got no coverage. So if a judgment is rendered for $100,000 against Malcolm plus defense costs, Malcolm has no insurance to cover it. He's assumed 100% at risk, and now he's going to pay up. Okay, Malcolm, this doesn't sound like a good thing, does it?
No, sir.
So this is a couple $100. Now, when we're talking about this, we spend a lot of time with the mastermind group talking about this. Before you hire a home inspector, okay, you need to give your independent insurance agent his driver's information, and you'll collect it, driver's license number and all that stuff, because the insurance company wants to know who's being covered under this provision of the policy, hired and not owned. So if the person has a DUI or has a bunch of points, then the insurance company says, I'm not going to insure that guy. You can't hire him. Because if you hire him anyway and there's no coverage and he has an at-fault auto accident and the plaintiff's attorney sues your company, you're going to pay that out of your pocket. Okay, so you just can't do it. So you have to give this information up front to your insurance agent and let him have the insurance company pull the motor vehicle record on this individual. You really should do it for anybody. If you have a clerical support person or inside marketing rep or whatever, and they're going to drive even incidentally, then you need this coverage and you need the insurance company to say, yes, they're acceptable. Okay. That makes sense to everybody. If you don't have employees, don't worry about this. But the minute you have any employees, that's cool. If you get this, type 2 and I'll shut up and we'll go on to something else. This is a huge problem for home inspectors, and it's one they're unaware of. Okay, so nobody typed anything, so maybe I shouldn't roll on. Okay, so if you're hiring inspectors, we can get into this. We get into it all the time on the Savvy site about this. So hired and unowned, it should be a couple $100, nothing more. Right.
And I think 2,000 sounds drastically high for your own vehicle. Does it not?
Even if it's a commercial vehicle, it's too high.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about just one other thing on this. This is really important too. If you hire a home inspector, you need to be able to say, hey, I need your personal auto policy to have minimum limits of X, 300,000 any occurrence, 600,000 per policy period, or 500,000 in liability, any occurrence, $1 million, for the policy period. Because what happens is if they have minimum limits, 25 or 30,000, and they get in an at-fault auto accident while they're on the job, the plaintiff's attorney is coming straight for you because the claim. I mean, Malcolm, let me say, what is the new BMW 750? What does that cost?
I don't know. I'm not into luxury vehicles.
I bet it's over $100,000. Okay, so easy, over $100,000. So if you got 30,000 in liability coverage, you total the damn thing because you were at fault. There's 70,000. The guy's out. So you think the plaintiff's attorney's coming after you? Of course they are. How about if you have? I was in an auto accident and a head-on collision up here in beautiful Jasper. I want to say it totaled a $50,000 car that was brand new, 2 days old. My medical expenses, I got air evac to a trauma center in Chattanooga, Erlanger there, Malcolm, you know it very well, our homes, both yours and mine. And then what happens is my medical expenses, and then by the time all the things come up, my bill was over $200,000. Okay, you got $30,000 in auto insurance. Guess what? You've left me 170 short. Now I'm angry now, so I'm going after whoever I can go after. Okay, so the fact of the matter is this. So my point by telling you this whole thing is you need to be sure that your inspector, the candidate, informs the insurance company that you want to be named as a certificate holder. A certificate holder, not an additional insured, because you have no additional insured interest in that policy, but a certificate holder. So when they name you as a certificate holder, any changes that are made to that policy, the insurance company is required to notify you in writing. Okay, so let's say that when you hire the person, you say, that your auto liability has to come to 300, 600, or 500, a million, and they say, great, so they do it. So now they give you the certificate of insurance, you're thinking, oh, this is all good. So then 2 weeks later, they lower it back and you don't know about it. Okay, yep. So without being a certificate holder on that policy, on their personal auto policy, you'll never know what's happening. Because it does cost more to increase your limits, no question about it. Some states more than others. So you're asking them to pay more money for their personal auto insurance. Okay, so they go behind your back, boom, lower it back down, and you don't know it. They have an at-fault accident, and you're tattooed for no reason. You know, if they'd had the right limits, they would have never pierced that. Okay, so all kind of crazy good stuff. So just, you got to know it. You got to know it. So be a certificate holder if you hire them. We'll get into insurance again and again. There's a lot to it.
If I could just say something there, Ken, I think what a lot of people fail to understand too, with our insurance anyways, if you have the non-hired, non-owned auto coverage on their vehicle, it shouldn't be more than a couple $100, but they also need, if you're providing equipment and tools, you need an equipment floater policy or whatever it's called, because if those get stolen, those are not covered in that.
It's called an inland marine policy. Yeah, you're exactly right.
What is it?
Inland marine policy, where you schedule out like infrared cameras and other things that are above a certain dollar threshold. And each insurance company does it different.
Awesome. And then just for those that provide company vehicles, like us, we provide company vehicles, but not for, like you said, the office person is going to get stamps. I think for us to cover their personal vehicles, or even the inspector says, oh, I'm going to go to the office real quick and grab a radon machine or something. I think it was only a couple $150 to cover all those for all our employees, just because they're not driven much. So,
right.
So that's easy too.
So while we're talking about this, Malcolm, is where this hired and non-owned auto coverage goes. It's an endorsement or an add-on to your business owner's policy, or BOP. So here's what you should do. This is what we do, and this is what you should do. This is what I've done my whole life. I go to an independent insurance agent, a man or woman, in my local community. Okay, so they don't represent Allstate. That's a direct writer. State Farm is a direct writer. I would encourage you not to use them. They work for the company. I want an independent insurance agent that can shop my coverages with a dozen companies and get me the best coverage and price. Okay, so that's called an independent insurance agent. They're all over in your community. They're, probably in your B&I group. So what you do is you go to them and say, here's what happens. My employees drive their own vehicle. We have this kind of exposure. We have expensive infrared cameras in their in their vehicles. And so when you lay out, it's like your doctor. Don't hold back. Tell this person everything. And then what they'll do is they'll custom design you a plan that protects you from all of these crazy risks. All right, so here's a risk. Okay, so you hire a home inspector. He's driving his own vehicle, and guess what happens is he has his vehicle rated for personal use, not business use. Okay, so he's driving around. He has an at-fault accident, and what happens is he calls in his insurance company, and they're going to deny the claim because of a material misrepresentation. You told me that you were using that vehicle for personal use, which means the grocery store, church, or synagogue, back and forth to work. But what you're doing is you're a home inspector and you're driving thousands of miles a year on the road. You didn't tell us we didn't collect the premium for that, so there's no coverage. So if he gets a material misrepresentation, denial from his company, who's coming after you, Malcolm?
Everybody involved.
You got it. I mean, everybody involved is coming after your business. So when you're named as a certificate holder, you'll see that it's rated business use or personal use. You'll see the limits, everything about that policy on one little 8.5 by 11 page. And if it's not rated for business use, you've opened yourself wide open, because he's going to get a denial. I mean, they'll say, hey, if you'd have told us it was business use, we'd have paid the claim. But you told us that's not what you were doing. You were just out driving around, you know, back and forth to work, this, that, and the other. Not this many miles, so we don't have any coverage. Now, who would have ever thought hiring employees could be this? There could be some technical things like this. This is why people like to work for others.
Right.